They say grandparents are the soul of every celebration, but at my granddaughter's wedding, the one I had quietly saved for over 5 years to pay for, they gave me a single label: the old lady who pays for everything. No seat at the main table, no word of thanks, just a handwritten insult and a chair near the service door. I stood up, smoothed the thrift store dress I'd bought, and walked out without a word. A few minutes later, after just one phone call, the catering staff stopped setting plates, the servers began clearing their stations, and the entire reception timeline started to unravel. You wouldn't believe what happened next. My name is Donna Walker, and all my life I believed that love meant sacrifice without complaint. In our small coastal town of Harborside, Maine, most people knew me as the lunch lady at the elementary school, the one who worked for 32 years. The one who remembered which kids needed an extra serving and which had allergies their parents couldn't afford to treat. I was the one who stayed late to help with school fundraisers, who came in early to make sure the free breakfast program ran smoothly. But very few knew how I lived after my daughter, Sarah, passed away. The car accident took her, leaving me with 7-year-old Natalie, her wide blue eyes filled with questions I couldn't answer. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house on Spruce Lane. The wind whistled through the poorly insulated windows, and the roof leaked through the cold season. I could have moved somewhere cheaper, farther inland. But that was Sarah's house, the place where Natalie had marked her height on the kitchen doorway, where she knew every creak of the floor and every corner of the home. So I stayed, and I kept working. After hours at the school kitchen, I knitted sweaters and quilts to sell at craft fairs. On weekends, I helped with church dinners to earn a little extra. I mended socks, patched jeans, and made gifts by hand instead of buying them. Throughout Natalie's childhood, I had only one winter coat patched so many times it no longer resembled the original, but I never thought of it as hardship. It was simply what I had to do to give Natalie the life her mother would have wanted for her, and Natalie deserved every bit of it. She was bright, curious, with her mother's laugh and her grandfather's stubborn chin. When she got accepted to the University of Maine with a partial scholarship, I withdrew the small life insurance policy I had set aside for retirement. "You can't do that, Grandma," she protested. "That's your safety net." I said, "You're my safety, sweetheart. Your future is my investment." College changed Natalie, as it should have. She became more confident, more worldly. The calls came less often, her visits shorter. I told myself that was normal. Healthy, even proof I'd done my job right. When Natalie met Carter Wells during her junior year, I was genuinely happy for her. He looked polished, ambitious, though he carried that subtle air of superiority towards small-town folks like us. 3 years later, they got engaged, and Natalie called me in tears. "It's going to be perfect, Grandma. My dream wedding." That night, I opened a new savings account, the wedding fund. Each month, I put in what I could. $50 here, a little more there, especially during months when I got extra work substituting at school. I took on sewing jobs for neighbors. I didn't turn on the heat until November, wearing extra layers and using hot water bottles. I sold my grandmother's silverware set, keeping only a single spoon as a keepsake. I saved for 5 years. During those 5 years, I pictured Natalie glowing in her white gown, celebrated in the wedding her mother never had. Every sacrifice I made became sacred because it was for Natalie. When Natalie and Carter started planning, the costs turned out far higher than what I had saved, but I didn't hesitate. "I've been saving to help you," I told her, as we toured a restored barn venue that cost more than my monthly pension. "I want you to have what you want." Her eyes welled up as she hugged me. "You're the best, Grandma. I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words carried me through even more sacrifices. Through the winter, I kept the thermostat at 58 degrees Fahrenheit. I postponed fixing the roof until the next year. I skipped a few medical appointments to save on copays. Each time I deposited more money into that fund, I felt like I was sending a little more happiness to Natalie, and her happiness was mine. But as the wedding drew closer, I began to notice changes. Natalie stopped asking my opinion, only reminding me of bills that needed to be paid. When I visited her in Portland, where she and Carter lived in a luxury apartment, she seemed restless, eager to finish lunch and go get her nails done. When I offered to sew her veil myself like I'd once done for Sarah, she smiled politely. "Thank you, Grandma, but we have a specific aesthetic." I told myself not to be hurt. It was her day, not mine. My job was to support, not interfere. The night before the wedding, I laid out my outfit. A pale gray dress from the church thrift shop, altered to fit my thinner frame. I even paid to have it pressed because I wanted to look my best. Beside it, I placed the gift I had spent months making, a quilt stitched from pieces of Natalie's life, her childhood Halloween costumes, her high school graduation dress, the flannel shirt she wore fishing with her grandpa. Every square told a story, and together they formed a record of our shared journey. The morning was clear and cool, just like a June day in Maine should be. The ceremony at Street Marks Church was beautiful but brief. Carter's parents had hired a professional planner, so everything ran like clockwork. I sat in the second row reserved for family, though I noticed that the entire first row was filled with the Wells family. Natalie looked radiant but also distant, polished, like a stranger wearing my granddaughter's face. Still, when she spoke her vows, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, and tears welled in my eyes. Afterward, everyone headed to the reception at the Harborside Boathouse, a historic building newly renovated into a luxury event space. I arrived early, carrying my gift wrapped in brown paper and tied with a blue ribbon I'd saved from Christmas. The place had been transformed. Lights cascaded like waterfalls from the wooden beams. Fresh flowers were everywhere. Servers in white uniforms carried trays of drinks I couldn't even name. I approached the check-in desk, where a young woman with a tablet greeted me. "Hi, I'm Donna Walker, the bride's grandmother." "Of course," she said, scrolling through her list. "Here's your envelope, ma'am. You're at table 19, north corner." I thanked her and opened the envelope. Inside was a small card written in elegant calligraphy, but it didn't say Donna Walker or grandmother of the bride. It said, "The old lady who pays for everything." I blinked, thinking I'd misread it, but the words were still there, black ink on cream paper. A joke. I was the punchline. I pinned the card to my dress with trembling hands. Maybe it was some kind of modern wedding humor I didn't understand. Maybe Natalie or Carter thought it was a clever way of saying thank you. I followed the signs to table 19. Just as she'd said, it was in the farthest corner, partly hidden behind a decorative partition neither near the guests nor the family. When I got closer, I realized it wasn't even a proper dining table, just a small cocktail table with a single chair. Right beside it was the storage room where they kept linens and spare vases. I placed the gift on the chair and looked around to get my bearings. Across the room, I saw them preparing the main table for Natalie, Carter, their parents, and the wedding party. There was no place for me. In the center of the room stood a large screen displaying the seating chart. I searched for Donna Walker, but my name had been replaced with a label. I wasn't listed as family at all. "Donna," a familiar voice called. George McConnell, the catering manager, approached with concern. George was a Harborside local who'd once owned a family restaurant before switching to event catering. He'd given Sarah her first waitressing job and had known Natalie since she wore pigtails. "George," I tried to smile, "this place looks amazing." He nodded, then lowered his voice. "Are you all right? You look a bit lost." I almost told him everything. I almost showed him the card that burned like fire on my chest. But what good would it do to cause a scene on Natalie's special day? "I'm just a little emotional," I said. "It's been a long day." He still looked worried. "We'll be serving dinner soon. I made sure they kept your favorite blueberry pie." George left, and I returned to my assigned spot. From there, I could see the entrance clearly as guests poured in. They were greeted warmly, guided to elegant tables with multiple chairs, napkins, and floral arrangements. Natalie and Carter entered to applause. They looked perfect, the bride in her designer gown, the groom in his tailored tuxedo. They walked through the crowd like royalty, stopping to chat with each group. I waited for Natalie to see me, to wave, to invite me closer. But she didn't. Through the entire cocktail hour, I sat alone at that small table, the quilt resting on my lap. No one approached. Not a single server offered me water. It was as if I were invisible, or worse, something to be hidden, like the stacks of tablecloths in the storage room behind me. Then came the announcement for family photos. I stood, straightened my dress, and made my way toward the photographer. The Wells family was already gathered, polished, and coordinated. I stood nearby, watching them pose Carter's relatives, the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, everyone smiling. Natalie stood in the middle, laughing at something Carter's father said. The photographer started arranging people, calling out family groups. Then Carter's mother, Victoria, an elegant woman with sleek hair and a perpetually assessing gaze, pointed toward the Wells side. "Now that we're all one family," she said sweetly, "Natalie, stand with us." And the photos began. The Wells family with the bride, the couple with their parents, group shots with the wedding party. If there were pictures for my side of the family, no one called my name. When the group finally dispersed, Natalie glanced in my direction. For a second, I thought she'd come over, apologize for forgetting me. But she looked at the card pinned to my dress, then turned away, leaning into Carter with an awkward smile. That was the moment I understood. The card wasn't a mistake, the lonely table wasn't an oversight, my exclusion from the photos wasn't an accident, it was all intentional. I wasn't respected at this wedding. I was tolerated, hidden, and ridiculed. I didn't speak a word. I picked up the gift and walked straight out, no scene, no tears, just holding on to the last shred of dignity I'd fought to keep my whole life, even as I felt myself breaking inside like fine china dropped on stone. Outside, the air carried the scent of salt and pine. I found a bench facing the harbor and sat down, setting the gift beside me, my hands folded on my lap. Then, with the same calm determination that had guided me through years of saving, I took out my phone and called George. The line rang several times before he answered, his voice mixed with the noise of a busy kitchen. "Donna, are you all right? I noticed you weren't at your seat." "I'm down by the docks," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "But they're about to serve the first course." "Is something wrong?" he asked softly. The sea breeze rustled the brown paper around the quilt I'd made for Natalie. I looked out toward the horizon, where fishing boats were returning to the pier, their silhouettes steady and sure, unlike this day. "George, I need to ask you something. Whose name is the wedding contract under?" A pause. "It's under yours, Donna. You made the deposit, signed the paperwork, and the final payment is due tonight." "I know," I said, "and you know my pension payment just came in tonight." George hesitated, his tone changing. "Donna, what are you about to do?" I closed my eyes, fully aware of what I was about to say, not out of spite or revenge, but out of the need to be seen as a person with dignity, not a walking wallet. "I'm not authorizing another minute of service beyond what's already been served," I said clearly. "I'll cover what's already out, but I won't approve the remaining balance. Please stop the service effective immediately." He asked quietly, "Is it because of something I did?" "No," I said, looking down at the card. "It's because of what they did to me." A long silence followed, broken only by the clatter of pans and murmured instructions in the kitchen. When George finally spoke again, his voice had hardened. "It's because of how they treated you, isn't it? I saw where they seated you by the storage room, alone. And that name card, I caught a glimpse of it. I couldn't believe what it said." "It said exactly what they think of me," I replied, the words heavy but freeing. "That label." George swore under his breath, something I'd never heard from him in 30 years of knowing him. "Good Lord, Donna, are you sure? This is going to cause a scene." I looked toward the boathouse, where the warm light spilled through the windows, silhouettes of people inside laughing and talking. Somewhere among them was Natalie, the little girl I'd once raised, who used to weave me crowns of dandelions, who once called me the most important person in her life. And now she was letting others hide me away, label me, and mock me on the very day I'd spent 5 years sacrificing for. "I'm sure," I said, "the contract is under my name. I've done my part for months, made the deposits, chose the menu, attended every tasting, but I didn't pay all this money just to humiliate myself. So stop the service. Right now." George went silent for a moment, then said, "All right, Donna, I'll handle it. His voice softened. I think Sarah would be proud of you right now. Hearing Sarah's name made my chest tighten. Would she be proud or disappointed that I had ended Natalie's wedding? But I remembered Sarah's strength, the way she always stood up against injustice, the way she taught Natalie to be grateful and kind. Thank you, George, I said. Where will you go now? I think I'll go home. It's been a long day. Do you want me to tell them about the name card and everything? I hesitated. Part of me wanted everyone to know the truth, but the other part, the one that had spent a lifetime putting others first, still held back. Just tell them the person who signed the contract canceled the service. That's enough. They'll figure out the rest. I hung up and sat still, watching the sunset fade. My phone rang immediately, Natalie. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. I turned off the sound and tucked it away. I should have felt guilty. But instead, I felt lighter, as if I had finally laid down a burden I'd carried for years. Donna Walker, for heaven's sake, what are you doing out here all by yourself? I turned around. Elsie Donnell, my neighbor of 30 years, stood there in her floral dress, low-heeled shoes, and her familiar silver hair pinned neatly on top. We'd been friends since Sarah was in elementary school. We'd both been widowed, both raised our children, both grown old together on Spruce Lane. Elsie, I said, surprised. I didn't know you were invited. I wasn't, she grumbled, sitting beside me. Father Hawkins dragged me along. Said he needed someone to help him survive this fancy party. She looked me over carefully. You look like you've been through a storm. What happened? I unclipped the card from my dress and handed it to her. Elsie squinted in the dim light, then let out an angry hiss. Well, I'll be damned. Who did this? Don't tell me it was Natalie? I don't know who made it, I said. But Natalie saw it. She didn't say a word. Elsie's face softened. Oh, Donna, after everything you've done for her. They put me in a corner where no one would notice. And they took family photos without me. My voice shook for the first time, as if I wasn't family. Elsie gripped my hand tightly. You're more family to that girl than anyone in that building. I took a deep breath. I already did it. I called George. Elsie's eyes widened, then she burst out laughing. Well, I'll be. Donna Walker finally showed her claws. Good for you. It's about time. From inside the boathouse, the music stopped. Through the glass, we could see staff clearing tables, packing boxes, loading carts. Want to stick around to watch the chaos? Elsie teased. I've seen enough, I said. Can you drive me home? I took the bus here. Of course. She stood, glancing down at the wrapped package. What's that? A quilt I made for Natalie, from pieces of her childhood clothes. I brushed my fingers over the brown paper. Now I don't know what to do with it. Bring it with you, Elsie said firmly. She doesn't deserve it today, but maybe one day she'll need it. As we walked toward the parking lot, my phone buzzed nonstop in my pocket. I ignored it. Behind us, from inside the boathouse, came sounds of shouting, crashing, and confusion. The ripple of my quiet phone call spread outward like waves across still water. For the first time in my life, I walked away from a mess instead of staying to fix it. It might have been the most selfish thing I'd ever done, and the most necessary. Elsie drove me home in her old Buick, filling the silence with talk about church events and her grandson's college plans, ordinary stories that steadied me. As the adrenaline faded, the familiar streets of Harborside passed by slowly outside the window, untouched by the small storm I had set off at the boathouse. When we reached my little house, Elsie asked, "Want me to come in for a bit? I'll make you some hot punch." I said I needed a little quiet, but thanked her for everything. She squeezed my hand and told me to call her any time, day or night. Inside my home, I moved through the familiar rooms like a sleepwalker. I turned on the lights, hung up my coat, and set Natalie's quilt still wrapped in paper on the dining table. The clock on the mantel showed a little past 8 p.m. The wedding should have been in full swing by now, dinner being served, or rather, supposed to be served. I put the kettle on for tea, the kind of habit ingrained so deep I could do it blindfolded. As the water heated, I pulled the name card from my pocket. The elegant handwriting still mocked me. The old lady who pays for everything. I set it on the counter, a small but powerful reminder of why I'd called George. When I opened my phone, there were 17 missed calls and a flood of frantic messages. "Grandma, where are you? What happened with the catering? The staff all left. What did you do? Call me back. You're behind this, aren't you?" I put the phone down without replying. What could I possibly say to Natalie now? How could I explain that after a lifetime of putting others first, I had finally reached my limit? The kettle whistled. I had just poured hot water into my cup when headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed, footsteps hurried up the porch, and then came the pounding on my door. "Grandma, I know you're in there. Open the door." Natalie's voice was tight, sharp with emotion. I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, the same one that had looked lovely this morning but now felt like a costume, and opened the door. Natalie nearly stumbled inside as it swung open. She stood before me in her wrinkled wedding dress, her carefully pinned hair now a tangled mess, a few strands falling across her flushed face. Mascara streaked beneath her eyes showed she'd been crying. "What did you do? Do you even know what's happening right now?" she demanded, not even waiting for me to close the door. The caterers packed up everything. No plated dinner, no staff to serve, no dessert service, nothing the reception depended on. "George said you canceled the contract." I gestured toward the living room. "Sit down, Natalie." "I don't want to sit. I want to know why you ruined my wedding." Her voice cracked on the last word, pain breaking through her anger. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the kitchen, picked up the name card, and handed it to her. She took it, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she recognized it. "That was waiting for me at the reception," I said softly. "The card that greeted me at the wedding I spent 5 years paying for." Natalie looked down at the card, then up again, defensive. "It was just a joke, Grandma." Ryan Carter's friend handled the name cards. "He thought it was, funny. It wasn't meant to offend you." "A joke," I repeated. "So was seating me by the storage room a joke too? And leaving me out of the family photos?" She winced. The seating was complicated. Victoria Carter's mom handled that part, and the pictures just moved fast. It wasn't intentional. "Never intentional, is it?" I said, walking toward the rocking chair my late husband built when Sarah was born. I used to sit there rocking Natalie through earaches and nightmares. "Intentional or not, you showed me exactly where I stand." Natalie followed me into the room and dropped onto the sofa, her gown spilling around her. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to build pillow forts in that same spot. My heart ached. "So you canceled everything over one stupid card?" she shouted. "Do you know how humiliating this is? People filmed it. Carter's parents are furious. My wedding is ruined. Last winter I froze in this house just to keep adding to your wedding fund." She frowned, confused. "What does that have to do with?" "I skipped dental surgery for a broken tooth," I continued. "I sold your grandpa's fishing gear. I rode the bus instead of fixing my car. Every sacrifice so I could add a few more dollars to your wedding fund." Natalie's face changed. The defiance faded, replaced by shock. You never told me. I never asked you to." "No, you didn't ask. You just waited. You waited for me to pour my savings into your perfect day. You waited for me to be grateful for the scraps of attention you tossed my way. You waited for me to swallow being labeled the old lady who pays for everything, to be hidden away like something embarrassing or inconvenient." "That's not fair," she said quietly. "What's not fair," I replied, "is giving someone everything you have and being treated like you don't deserve a decent seat." Natalie fell silent, staring down at the card in her hand. Outside, rain began to patter softly against the window, the sound that once made us both feel safe. Victoria said big weddings are complicated. Not everyone gets priority. Family traditions have to evolve. "Whose family traditions, Natalie? The Wells family with their matching outfits and magazine-perfect photos? Or yours, ours, your mother and me?" At the mention of Sarah, Natalie flinched. "It's not the same," she whispered. "Mom's gone." "Yes," I said. "But I'm right here. I've always been here. I leaned forward, looking straight at her. Do you remember when you were 9 and wanted to join the summer fair? You cried because we couldn't afford the costume. She nodded faintly. I stayed up 3 nights sewing it from discounted fabric and scraps of Mrs. Peterson's old wedding dress. I was exhausted, but when you wore that plastic crown and smiled like sunshine, it was worth every stitch. I sighed. That's who I am, Natalie. The person who would give you everything. Who would lose sleep, comfort, and security just to see you happy. I know, she said quietly. But today, they didn't treat me like that person. They treated me like a burden, like something to hide and laugh at. I pointed at the card. Like that label, instead of the woman who raised you. Natalie began to cry, mascara running down her cheeks. I didn't want it to end up like this. I believe you, I said, but it did. And when I saw that card, when I realized I'd been pushed aside, when I watched them take family photos without calling me over, something inside me broke. She looked up suddenly. So what, Grandma? You ruined my wedding, and now we're ruined too? I didn't ruin your wedding, I said. I just stopped paying for it. There's a difference. Only on paper. The result's the same. My wedding's a disaster. The Wells think I come from nothing, and everyone's laughing. She was shouting now, her voice cracking with fury. Before I could answer, headlights flashed through the window again, followed by a car door slamming hard enough to shake the walls. Heavy footsteps thudded up the porch, then pounding on the door made the hinges groan. Carter, Natalie said, her face paling. He followed me here. He's furious. I rose slowly from the rocking chair, my back aching from the long day. Well, I suppose it's time to meet the real Carter Wells, not the charming man who called me Mrs. Walker with a rehearsed smile, but the one pounding on a 75-year-old woman's door in the middle of a rainstorm to vent his anger. The banging came again, louder this time. Grandma, please, Natalie begged. Let me talk to him first. He's not calm. Or maybe, I said, walking toward the door. This is who he really is, and it's time you saw it. I opened the door. Carter stood there in the rain, his tuxedo jacket tossed aside, tie loosened, face flushed whether from anger or alcohol, or both. His luxury car was parked at the curb, headlights cutting through the downpour. Mrs. Walker, he said, his voice stripped of any trace of politeness, replaced by cold fury, we need to talk. I know, I answered, neither stepping back nor inviting him in. You seem upset. Carter let out a sharp laugh. Upset? Is that what you call what happened to my wedding? A disaster you caused? My parents' friends are posting videos online. The caterers walked out halfway through. Our big day turned into a circus. Carter, please, Natalie said, stepping beside me. Let's go home. We can talk about this tomorrow when everyone's calmer. But Carter didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me. What did we ever do to deserve this? Tell me. I really want to know, what did we do that was so unforgivable that you had to humiliate us in front of everyone? The genuine confusion in his voice told me everything I needed to know about how he saw things and how he saw me. I pushed the door open wider. Come in, Carter. If we're going to have this conversation, I'd rather not let the neighbors hear it. He stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne mixed with damp fabric. I led them both into the living room. I sat in my old rocking chair while they sat stiffly on the sofa, Natalie's wedding dress spilling across the worn rug. You asked why this happened, I began slowly. Let me show you. I picked up the name card from the table and handed it to him. This was my card at your wedding. Carter glanced at it, then looked up, frowning. It was just a joke. Ryan thought it'd be funny. That's all. A joke, I repeated, letting the word drop heavy between us. And you laughed, Carter, when you saw what they wrote about me. He shifted uncomfortably. I didn't really notice. There was a lot going on. Didn't notice, I said. Just like you didn't notice that I was seated by the storage room. Just like you didn't notice that I wasn't in a single family photo. Photos? Carter waved a hand dismissively. My mom handled that. If you wanted to be in one, you should have said something. "Carter!" Natalie hissed, but it was too late. "I see," I said softly. Finally, the truth shows itself. His face reddened with irritation, but his chin stayed high in defiance. "Look, Mrs. Walker," Carter said, "I appreciate everything you've done, your financial help, raising Natalie, all of it. But that doesn't give you the right to destroy our wedding just because you were upset about the seating chart." "The seating chart," I repeated carefully. "So to you, this was just hurt feelings? A mocking card, being excluded from photos, and I was supposed to smile and stay quiet. Was it worth canceling the entire catering service?" Carter shot back. "Embarrassing my parents, ruining the wedding we spent a year planning?" I looked at the man before me, polished, handsome, and completely blind to anything that didn't benefit himself. And in that instant, I saw Natalie's future laid out clearly, a life where her feelings would always come second to her husband's family's reputation, where her roots in Harborside would become gossip at cocktail parties. And me, just a footnote, something to be hidden when convenient. "Carter," I said calmly, "who do you think paid for the part of the wedding I canceled?" He blinked. "Both families shared the costs. My parents paid for the venue and the band, and—" "I'm not asking about that," I said. "I'm asking about the catering." Carter swallowed hard. "Well, me, Natalie. We paid. We covered the flowers, the cake, the photographer, and half the honeymoon." "When you say Natalie," I replied, "you mean the money she used, because it all came from me." Natalie had let Carter believe it was her own savings. Carter turned to Natalie for confirmation. She nodded slightly, avoiding his gaze. "I gave up comfort and care for myself for years to fund your wedding, more than you ever bothered to see." Each sentence dropped between us like a stone. Carter's voice hardened. "I didn't know all the details, but that was your choice. No one made you do it." "Right," I said. "My choice. Just like it was my choice to stop paying when I realized my contribution meant nothing to you." I leaned forward. "The contract is in my name. Every deposit came from my account, and I exercised my right to cancel." "Your legal right?" Carter snapped. "You want to talk about legal rights? My father's already speaking with our family lawyer. Breach of contract, emotional distress." "Carter, stop," Natalie interjected. "You're making it worse." "The only good thing," Carter said, staring straight at me, "is that you understand what you've done. Do you realize what this has done to our reputation? What the community will think? Everyone filmed it, it's all over the internet already." "There it is," I said quietly. "That's what truly matters to you. Image. Not the older woman who gave you and Natalie everything. Not the lack of respect shown to the person who raised your wife. Just what people will think." Carter jumped up, completely losing his temper. "This is ridiculous. You're not even sorry. You sit there pretending to be noble, but really, you're just a bitter old woman who can't stand not being the center of attention." Natalie gasped. "Carter!" "It's all right, Natalie," I said. "At least he's finally being honest." "Honest? Fine. Here's honesty," Carter spat. "You don't belong in our world, Mrs. Walker. You never did. We tried to include you because you're Natalie's only family, but let's be real, you don't fit in at events like this. Not with thrift store clothes, not with small-town manners. If you'd just sat quietly in the corner, smiled when spoken to, and stopped making everything about you, none of this would have happened." The room went silent. Natalie sat there, tears streaming down her face. Outside, the rain pounded the roof in steady rhythm. Those words should have shattered me, but instead, I felt free. The truth, plain and ugly, had finally been spoken aloud. "Thank you for your honesty, Carter," I said, rising with whatever dignity I had left in my tired body. "It's a relief to finally hear you say what you really think." "Grandma," Natalie started, but I raised my hand. "No, Natalie. The truth is the truth. You see me the same way, as someone who doesn't belong in your new life, as a burden, something to tolerate out of duty." She hesitated, torn between the woman who had raised her and the man she'd just married. That hesitation was answer enough. "I think you two should go," I said softly. "It's been a long day." "This isn't over," Carter warned. My father won't let it go. There will be consequences. I opened the door. The cool night air hit my face. There already have been, Carter. For all of us. He brushed past me without another word, running through the rain toward his car. Natalie stood at the doorway, caught between two worlds. Grandma, I didn't want it to end like this, she whispered. He didn't mean what he said. He was angry. When people are angry, I replied quietly, that's when they say exactly what they mean. The polite words come later, and those are the ones you can't trust. She looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for forgiveness or a way back to the past. But some doors, once crossed, never lead to the same place again. I have to go with him, she said finally. He's my husband. I know, I said. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, a gesture I'd done since she was a little girl. But remember who you are, Natalie. Remember where you came from. That matters too. She nodded, then turned and ran through the rain toward Carter's car. I stood at the doorway watching the taillights disappear into the night. Then I closed the door, shutting out the wind, the rain, and the last pieces of a love that had once been unconditional. That night, I barely slept. I lay in my small bed, listening to the rain and replaying everything that had happened. I had done the right thing, the necessary thing, and maybe also the selfish thing. The three blurred together in ways only someone who'd spent a lifetime sacrificing for others could understand. Morning came with pale sunlight and the cries of seagulls over the harbor. For a fleeting moment between sleep and waking, I forgot everything. But then it all came back, the name card, the phone call, the ruined wedding, the cruel words in my living room, and Natalie walking away with the man who had just shown her his true self. I sat up slowly, my body stiff with age and emotion. The house was unnervingly still, as if holding its breath. I brewed a pot of coffee, toasted a slice of bread, and went through the motions of my morning routine, my mind adrift, detached from everything around me. On the dining table, the quilt meant for Natalie still lay there, perfectly wrapped in brown paper, a quiet reminder of what had happened and what hadn't. At exactly 10 o'clock, a loud knock pulled me out of my thoughts. For a moment, I expected to see Carter again, maybe with a lawyer in tow to threaten me, but it wasn't him. It was Elsie, standing on my porch, holding a covered pie dish and beaming like she brought good news. "Blueberry crumble," she announced, walking straight into my kitchen like she owned the place. Still warm, and I brought the good hazelnut coffee creamer. I followed her, still confused. "Elsie, it's barely morning." "Special occasion," she replied, setting plates and forks on the table with the ease of someone who'd done it 100 times. "Besides, I figured you should eat something before hearing what's going around town." A knot formed in my stomach. "Bad news?" "Depends," Elsie said, slicing the pie into big pieces. "If you care what Victoria Wells is saying about you." I sat down, accepting a plate of steaming pie. "I thought last night made it pretty clear I don't care anymore." "Good," Elsie said, pouring a bit of creamer into my coffee. "Because she's telling everyone you've got some kind of age-related disorder, that they're considering a wellness check to see if you can still live independently." "I'm 75, I said, stunned. "Not senile." "Exactly what I told Doris at the pharmacy," Elsie replied through a mouthful of pie. "But here's the best part no one believes, Victoria. George has been setting things straight," she added. "George? I thought after last night's call he'd want to stay out of it." "Oh, he's involved all right. He's been explaining to folks that the catering contract was under your name. He even mentioned the name card." Elsie lowered her voice like she was sharing a secret. "And he's not the only one." She tilted her head, thinking, "That nice photographer, what's his name? Justin. He's got photos of you sitting alone at that tiny table by the storage room. And others of the family photos without you." I set my plate down, suddenly not hungry. The thought of my humiliation spreading across Harborside, even with sympathy, made my cheeks burn with shame and grief. "I don't want last night turning into town gossip." "Donna," Elsie said gently but firmly, "it already is. The biggest wedding of the year falling apart because the caterers walked out? That's front-page news here." Her expression softened. "But if you want some good news, everyone's on your side. Even Pastor Hawkins. Pastor Hawkins? I was genuinely surprised. The mild-mannered pastor of our little church was known for avoiding drama. He stopped by the cafe this morning, Elsie said. Told everyone he saw it all, how they isolated you, the name card, the way you left quietly. Said it was the most dignified response he'd ever witnessed. Before I could process that, another knock came at the door. Elsie raised an eyebrow. Busy morning. This time it was George McConnell. His kind, broad face was creased with concern. "Donna," he said the moment I opened the door. "I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to check if you're all right." I invited him in. He carried a paper bag smelling of freshly baked bread. In the kitchen, he greeted Elsie like an old friend, then turned to me with a serious look. "I want you to know," George said. "I've made it clear around town. You were within your rights, and the contract backs you up." "Thank you," I said, touched. "I just hope it didn't cause trouble for your business." George laughed. "Quite the opposite. I've had 3 new orders this morning. Turns out people like a caterer who honors their contracts." He placed the paper bag on the counter. "Sourdough, fresh from the oven. And there's one more thing. The Wells family plans to sue." My heart sank. "Carter mentioned that last night." "Yeah, well, they can try," George said confidently. "I already spoke to my cousin Todd. He's a lawyer in Portland. He says they don't stand a chance. The contract's in your name. The cancellation clause is clear. They might even owe you a partial refund." Elsie snorted, satisfied. "Good. Let them waste their money on overpriced lawyers." While they discussed the details, I walked to the window and looked out at my small front garden. My peony bushes were beginning to bloom the flowers Sarah had loved most. I planted them after she passed, as a way to keep something beautiful of her still alive. Natalie used to help me in that garden. Her little hands would pat soil around the roots while she chattered endlessly about school and childhood dreams. Where was she now? At a hotel with Carter, humiliated after the ruined wedding, on their honeymoon, the one I'd helped pay for? Or at his parents' house, listening as they plotted their lawsuit? A third knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Good heavens," Elsie said. "Are we running a train station this morning?" This time it was Pastor Hawkins. His gentle face and neatly combed white hair were just as I remembered. "Mrs. Walker," he said solemnly, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied. "Looks like I'm hosting an impromptu gathering." No introductions were needed. Harborside was too small for that. He accepted a cup of coffee but declined the pie, sitting down with quiet purpose. "I came," he said directly, "to apologize and to share something that may bring you peace." "Apologize?" I asked, puzzled. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I witnessed something wrong and said nothing," he admitted, his voice heavy. "I saw them seat you apart. Saw you left out of the family photos. Saw that name card. And I did nothing." "You were a guest," I said. "It wasn't your responsibility." "Maybe not as a guest," he replied. "But as a pastor, someone who's known you and Natalie for years, I should have said something." He leaned forward. "And I also came to tell you this. Natalie came to see me this morning." I held my breath. "She's physically fine," he continued. "But emotionally, she's not. She and Carter had a terrible argument after leaving your house last night. She's at the Harborside Inn now, alone." The words hung in the kitchen air. Natalie, married less than a day, had left her husband. Because of me. Because of him. Because of truths that once spoken couldn't be taken back. "Did she ask about me?" I said, hating the tremor in my voice. "She asked if you'd ever forgive her," the pastor said softly. I told her that question wasn't mine to answer. The little kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock, my husband's gift for our 10th anniversary. That clock had watched over every joy and sorrow our family had known. "Donna," Elsie said gently, using my name the way only old friends do. "No one blames you. If you need time before seeing her, everyone will understand." I looked at the 3 people who had come to my house that morning, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. They saw me, truly saw me, not as the old lady who paid for everything, but as Donna Walker, a woman with dignity and worth. I think," I said slowly, "I want to see my granddaughter." The pastor nodded, satisfied. I thought you might say that. She asked if she could come by around 3 p.m. I said I'd pass the message. 3 o'clock, I repeated, glancing at the clock. Just over 4 hours not to clean or cook, but to prepare myself for a conversation that might redefine everything between us. After everyone left, each carrying a piece of my story to balance out the Wells family's lies, I turned back to the quilt, still resting on the table. I unwrapped the quilt and stared at it for a long time, proof of all the years I'd poured into loving her. Every piece had been chosen, cut, and stitched with love. Maybe that's what we needed to piece together the best parts of the past and make something new, something that acknowledged both love and pain. I folded the quilt and set it on the table as a reminder of what might still be saved. Then I did what I always did when my heart felt too heavy. I went to the kitchen. I started baking Natalie's favorite apple cinnamon cookies, the ones she'd asked for every birthday from age 7 to 17. Not as an apology, but as a thread that still connected us. At exactly 3 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I adjusted my apron, took a deep breath, and opened it. Natalie stood on the porch, nothing left of the radiant bride she'd been. Her hair was tied in a messy ponytail, eyes swollen from crying, dressed in jeans and an old University of Maine hoodie. "Grandma, can I come in?" she asked, her voice small and shaky. "Come in, Natalie," I said, stepping aside. She walked in slowly, as if unsure she was still welcome in the house she'd grown up in. In the living room, she sat at the edge of the sofa, the same spot where, less than a day ago, she'd sat in her wedding dress with a completely different kind of energy. "I made some cookies," I said. Seemed easier than jumping straight into the hard stuff. "Apple and cinnamon. They're cooling in the kitchen." Recognition flickered across Natalie's face. "Still your favorite?" She nodded, her hands clasped tightly together. I noticed the wedding ring was gone. "Tea or coffee?" I asked, clinging to the old rituals of hospitality that had shaped my life. "Just water." I brought her a glass of water and a small plate with 2 cookies, then sat in my familiar rocking chair. We stayed silent for a long time. The ticking clock, the distant gulls, the soft creak of the chair all filled the space between us. "I left Carter," Natalie said at last, her voice barely above a whisper. I waited. I knew there was more waiting to spill out. "Last night, after we left your house, we fought about you. About the wedding. About everything." She took a trembling breath. "He said awful things about you. Called you manipulative, said you ruined our day on purpose, that we should sue you to take whatever money you had left." Her voice cracked. "Then he said, maybe it was a good thing my mom wasn't alive to see how disappointing I turned out." I froze. "He said that?" Natalie nodded, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, I saw exactly who he was. Not the kind man I thought I married, but someone willing to use my deepest loss as a weapon. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I told him to pull over. He wouldn't, so I told him I'd get out right there if he didn't stop. He finally stopped. I got out in the rain and walked 3 miles to the Harborside Inn in my wedding dress." I leaned forward, wanting to take her hand, but not sure if she'd let me. "Natalie, once you see things clearly, you can't unsee them," she continued. "I kept thinking about that name card, where you were seated everything." She lifted her face, red-eyed but steady. "Carter knew, Grandma. About the card, the seat everything. He laughed when Ryan showed him the card. He's the one who suggested they sit you by the storage room because, in his words, no one important would see you there." The confession hung in the air, painful, but not surprising. "What about you?" I asked softly. Natalie hesitated, then lowered her head. "I didn't know about the name card, but I did know about the seating." Victoria said sitting farther from the crowd would be more comfortable for older guests. I didn't argue. I should have, but I didn't. Tears began to fall again. I saw what they were doing, and I didn't stop it. She let out a heavy sigh. "Victoria rushed everything. When I asked about you, she said they'd take special photos with you later." Natalie's shoulders trembled. But deep down, I knew. I knew they were doing it on purpose. And I let them. Because I wanted to belong to that world so badly that I lost myself. I nodded, accepting that painful truth. "Now I don't even know what I want anymore," she said. "Except one thing, I don't want to go back to being the person I was yesterday, the one who let her grandmother be treated that way." She held a cookie but didn't eat it. Carter's parents called their lawyer. They said they'd file for an annulment or a quick divorce, whatever ended this fastest. I think they want me gone as much as I want to be free of them. "How do you feel?" I asked, "knowing your marriage ended before it even began?" "Relieved," she admitted, "ashamed and scared." "Grandma," her voice cracked, "I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. For the wedding, for disrespecting you, for not standing up for you, for forgetting who I am." I looked at Natalie's face, the one I'd watched change from a chubby-cheeked little girl to an awkward teenager to a beautiful young woman. No matter what had happened, my love for her was unconditional. "I have something for you," I said, standing up. I brought over the quilt and placed it gently on her lap. "This was supposed to be your wedding gift." Natalie unfolded it, touching each square, recognizing the memories. The yellow dress I wore at my kindergarten graduation, the jeans I tore climbing trees, and this one the floral pattern from Mom's summer dress, from those pictures at the lake. I nodded. Every moment, every memory, stitched together. "It's beautiful," Natalie whispered. "I don't deserve it." "It's not about deserving," I said. "It's about belonging." For the first time in our conversation, I reached out and took her hand. She gripped mine like someone who had finally found something to hold on to after nearly drowning. "This quilt is your story," I said quietly. "The beautiful parts and the painful ones. You'll always have it, no matter what happens." "So, what happens now?" she asked, her voice fragile. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think it starts with honesty, with seeing each other clearly, not the versions we wish were true." I squeezed her hand. "If you need a place to stay while you sort things out, your old room is still here." She broke down, crying. "After everything, you'd still take me in?" "Natalie," I said gently, "there's a difference between letting someone use you and helping someone find their way back to themselves." I looked into her tear-filled eyes. "I won't be your ATM, but I'll always be your grandmother, the one who loves you and knows who you truly are." Natalie slid off the couch, kneeling beside me, resting her head on my knees like she used to when she was a child. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry." I stroked her hair, my heart softening. "I know. And we'll get through this one day at a time." 3 weeks later, I sat again on the bench by the harbor, the same spot where I had called George in that fateful moment. It was a bright June day. Blue skies, gentle wind, water shimmering like glass. Natalie sat beside me, the two of us eating ice cream from Mason's Dairy Bar, just like we used to. "I got word from the lawyer today," she said. "The annulment is final. On paper, I was never married to Carter." "How do you feel?" She caught a melting drop of ice cream with her tongue. "Like I dodged a bullet, like I've been handed a second chance to find myself again." The past 3 weeks hadn't been easy. There were tears, hard conversations, and moments when the wounds still felt too raw, but there were also small steps toward healing. Natalie helped me in the garden, came with me to church, joined my quilting group at the senior center. We were learning how to be together again. Not as a perfect grandmother and granddaughter, but as two imperfect women bound by love and history. "I applied for a teaching job at the elementary school," she said. "An art position. It's something I used to think about before I met Carter." "That's wonderful, Natalie. It's just a substitute position for now, but if it works out, I'm thinking of staying in Harborside for a while, if that's okay with you." "More than okay," I said, warmth spreading through my chest. We watched the boats in the harbor. Since the wedding, so much had changed. The gossip had quieted. The Wells family had retreated to their summer estate. The legal threats vanished. George's business was thriving. I'd been invited to join a book club, local events, even teach a quilting class at the community center. It was as if the town, after witnessing one small act of self-respect, had finally seen who I really was, not just Natalie's grandmother. "You know what I've been thinking about?" Natalie asked. "What's that?" That card. The one that said, "The old lady who paid for everything." She turned to me, her eyes deeper now, wiser. They meant it as an insult. But there's a truth they never understood. What truth? You did pay for everything. Not just with money, but with love, sacrifice, and endless effort. For Mom, for me, for this town. My eyes burned with emotion. They thought reducing you to the one who paid would be degrading, Natalie said. But really, it's proof of your strength that you've always given everything for the people you love, even when it cost you. I squeezed her hand, taken aback by her insight. I never thought of it that way, I said. I do, Natalie replied with a small smile. Lately I've been rethinking everything, like what real love actually is. It's not the glittering kind that falls apart under pressure. It's the kind that stays. The kind that dares to tell the truth, even when it hurts. We sat quietly, finishing our ice cream as the afternoon sunlight turned golden over the water. Not everything was healed. Some wounds would take more time. But in that moment, by the harbor, I felt something begin. Not the beginning Natalie once dreamed of in her wedding dress. Not the one I'd spent 5 years saving for. But perhaps the beginning we both needed, a beginning built on truth and seeing each other for who we truly were. The old lady who once paid for everything, but what I received in return, this honest connection, this chance to rebuild what truly matters, was worth more than all of it. I share this story not to make anyone take sides, but to remind us that love cannot survive in silence, and gratitude cannot grow if we're too busy chasing what glitters and forget where we came from. And what about you? Have you ever had a moment that made you reevaluate your relationship with your family? What lesson did you take from it? Share your thoughts below, so we people trying to find peace within our families can learn from one another. And if you'd like to join me for more stories full of emotion and reflection, stay with me so we don't miss the next journey together.